So good morning, everybody. Today we shall be discussing on primer designing and in silico PCR. I think I did not explain what is PCR. Already you are aware of that. It is nothing but a in vitro cell-free technique in which we amplify either DNA or RNA into millions of its copies. So this was first developed by Dr. Kary Mullis in 1983, for which he was awarded Nobel Prize in 1993. So Dr. Kary Mullis unfortunately died last year, and he had a great contribution to development of molecular biology by way of developing this technique. And this was considered as one of the epoch-making techniques discovered in the last century, which has almost rewritten the chapters in molecular biology, and also we have to reorient the developments in all branches of biology to cope up with the changing trend in molecular biology after the development of PCR technique. As we know, this is a highly valuable, widely applicable technique. Now PCR is a part of most of the other advanced molecular techniques used today. As we know, there are three important steps in a PCR reaction. First of all, before putting into the cycles of three steps of reaction, the reaction mixture containing all components of PCR are initialized by exposing to around 94 to 96 degrees Celsius for a period of 1 to 9 minutes, so as to make the double helix of DNA single-stranded molecules. So this is called one-time initialization. Then thereafter it is subjected to three steps on repeated cycles. Out of them, the first step is denaturation, second step is annealing, and the third step is extension or elongation. These steps are followed for definite time period at definite temperature, repeatedly in variable number of cycles from 25 to 35 cycles. So after we complete all the desired cycles of the three-step reactions, we keep the reaction mixture for another period of 5 to 15 minutes at 72 degrees Celsius for final extension. And then we allow it to be held at 4 degrees Celsius until we take out the PCR product from the PCR machine. So this is a common program for doing PCR reaction utilizing a thermal cycler. But as I already said, the basic steps in PCR are three: denaturation, annealing, and extension. In denaturation step, the DNA double helix gets denatured into single-stranded molecules. This is achieved by increasing the temperature beyond 94 degrees Celsius for a brief period of around 20 to 30 seconds. Depending upon the complexity of the composition of nucleic acid and the length of the DNA or RNA, the temperature may vary. In the second step, annealing, the PCR primer gets attached to the single-stranded molecules of nucleic acid, what is described as annealing. So the optimum temperature for annealing of a primer to the single-stranded DNA is around 50 to 65 degrees Celsius, and it can take place within a short period of time, 20 to 40 seconds. Lower the temperature, more will be the affinity for attachment or annealing. Higher the temperature, more will be the affinity for detachment or denaturation. And after proper annealing has taken place, we again raise the temperature to around 72 degrees Celsius so that the polymerase gets activated at that optimal temperature. And from the 3' end of the primer, a new strand of DNA is synthesized based on the template of the single-stranded DNA molecule. So this is called extension or elongation. These are known to you basically. But we also know that in the entire process of PCR amplification of nucleic acid, annealing is one of the critical steps. Unless the synthetic primers properly anneal to the single-stranded DNA molecule specifically at the desired site, no amplification can be initiated. Annealing depends on suitable temperature and also depends upon the specificity of the synthetic primer molecules, the oligonucleotide molecules. There are several factors that influence on the annealing process. Most of these factors are involving certain properties of the synthetic oligonucleotide primers. So primer properties mostly influence the successful annealing procedure. So we need to know what are the ideal properties of the primers that influence on annealing process. So that we are going to discuss today theoretically. There are several factors associated with that. We shall discuss one by one. Also, we shall discuss how the several properties of the primer will influence on the annealing process. Now, as we know that DNA is a double-stranded molecule. There are two strands of DNA, and both these strands are complementary to each other. That means the nucleotide in a position of the position of one strand is just complementary to the other. Adenine is complementary to thymine and cytosine is complementary to guanine. This is known to us. Suppose this is a double-stranded DNA in which this dotted portion of the DNA is our target for amplification. Suppose we want to amplify by PCR the dotted portion of the DNA. Now, the primers for proper amplification of this DNA molecule represented by the dotted portion may be designed by taking into account the flanking region of DNA on the, you can say, upstream and downstream of the target sequence. If this is the target sequence, this is the upstream of the target sequence, and on the other strand, this is the downstream of the target sequence. From one strand on the upstream, we will design the forward primer by taking the flanking region as template, and from the downstream of the target sequence on the other strand, from this portion, a complementary PCR primer will be designed. Now that means if we know the sequence, specific sequence of the flanking region of DNA, upstream and downstream of the target, we can design the primer specifically. Now for specific primers, the primer sequence will be just complementary to the flanking region. So from this, you can also possibly design the primer by manually reading the sequence of the flanking region. Suppose in here, the flanking region sequence is AAA, TTT, CCC, like that. This is the upstream region. So you can say that the primers can be designed based on this sequence as TTT, AAA, ZZZ, CCC, like that. So this may be the primer for specificity. Similarly, the reverse primer will be complementary to the downstream of the target sequence on the other strand. So this will be like this. You can also manually interpret it. So if we can do it manually, then what is the necessity of using softwares or online and offline tools for designing primers? Why do you need it? This is because of the fact that if we design the primer by manually reading the flanking region sequence, then the primer sequence may not be having all the needed properties, all the ideal properties of a primer. That may influence on the success of amplification. So if we want to design a primer having all the ideal properties intact or most of the ideal properties intact, then we shall have to consider many different factors that we are going to discuss today. And then also we shall discuss how the softwares or the online tools take into account all these ideal properties of a primer, and therefore they can give us the most suitable and optimally useful primers for our use. Now you can also imagine that suppose you want to have amplification of this dotted portion, our primer need not represent the sequence just upstream of the target sequence for the forward primer. So if we suppose take into consideration the sequence from here, suppose our primer starts not from T, but from after leaving aside 5 nucleotides, from the 6th nucleotide it starts. Suppose this is the primer from A onwards. So this primer will also be able to anneal to the target as that of the whole sequence, and the amplified product will also include the target sequence along with these 5 nucleotides. So that means we can shift the position of the primer anywhere towards upstream for the forward primer, similarly towards downstream for the reverse primer, to include the target sequence in our product. So that is the way the online and offline tools for primer designing do design the primer. That means they shift the position of the primer sequence upstream and downstream of the target sequence so that they can find the ideal properties of the primer, and when they get in a particular primer sequence, all the ideal properties are intact. That is usually provided by the software as the suitable primer. So what are the important ideal properties of a primer? Number one, the primer length. So ideally, the length of the primer may be variable from around 15 to 25 BP base pairs. But sometimes for certain specific purposes, we may need either shorter or longer primers. You will find in literature some primers designed to be around 30 to 35 BP even. But for optimal length, one may prescribe the primer to be limited to 18 to 22 BP. 18 to 22 BP is a optimum length, but if necessary, you can decrease the length to 15 BP or increase the length to around 25 to 30 BP if necessary. The principle is that the primer length should be such that it should not be too long, it should not be too short. That means it should be long enough to ascertain or ensure adequate specificity, and it should be short enough to ensure adequate sensitivity. Let me explain. Suppose we take a primer of a very short length. What will happen? Suppose instead of 18 BP, we are taking a primer of only 5 BP. Only 5 nucleotides are there. ATGCC, suppose, ATGCC. So these are 5 nucleotides present in the primer. Now, because it is a short length of a sequence, this kind of sequence may be present in many different positions within the genome sequence of an organism. Because genome sequence is several thousand or millions of nucleotides containing nucleotide sequence. So within that millions of nucleotide sequence, there may be some regions where the short sequence of the primer may be matching. So there will be several positions in which the primer will bind. That means there may be non-specific binding. It will not bind to only the target sequence, but it will also bind to several other positions in the genome sequence, which we do not want to amplify. So that means the primers, if they are very short, they will be highly sensitive. Sensitivity will be more, but their specificity will be less. On the other hand, if the primers are very long, suppose we are developing a primer of around 80 BP, they do have a specific sequence array, and if this sequence does not match appropriately to a particular, now more the length, more is the possibility that the primers will not anneal, because if there are mutations here and there within that long sequence, it will deprive the primer from annealing, means it will not allow the primer from annealing. So more the length of the primer sequence, lesser will be the sensitivity, but better will be the specificity. We may not get non-specific annealing of the primer, but at the same time, some mutations in the sequence of the organism within the primer length, then there may not be any annealing. So for a better sensitivity and specificity, we should have an optimum primer length. So optimum primer length is usually considered as 18 to 22 BP. Next point is melting temperature, or TM value. What is the TM value? So melting temperature of a primer is the temperature or the minimum temperature at which half of the DNA duplex will dissociate into single-stranded molecule. So we use the primer to anneal to the target sequence so that a preformed duplex is formed, so that the polymerase gets activated and can synthesize a new nucleotide sequence. So unless the duplex is formed with the single-stranded target molecule, unless it is stabilized temporarily, the polymerase cannot act. So to make the duplex of the primer to the template, or the duplex between the primer sequence and the target sequence, we must have to have a suitable temperature, because higher the temperature, more will be tendency to dissociate, because the hydrogen bonds between the nucleotides will be broken. So that is why the minimum temperature at which half of the duplexes get dissociated is considered as TM value, or melting temperature, and that is very important. More the melting temperature, more will be the stable of the duplex. If at a very low temperature the primer gets dissociated from the template, then it is not good primer. Similarly, if it requires a very high temperature to melt, it is also not a good primer, because during the process of PCR, we shall have to allow fluctuation of temperature from denaturation temperature to annealing temperature, then annealing temperature to extension temperature within a short period of time. So there should be mass variation between the annealing and the extension temperature. If the annealing temperature almost equals to extension temperature or reaches nearer to extension temperature, then such kind of primers are not good primers, because the association between the primer and the target will be so stable that in the subsequent cycles it may not be denatured properly. So primers with melting temperature above 65 degrees Celsius should have a tendency for secondary annealing, and therefore they are needed to be avoided. So optimum value for melting temperature of the primer is between 52 to 58 degrees Celsius. But if necessary, you can take a melting temperature starting from around say 47 to 48 degrees Celsius to around say 60 to 62 degrees Celsius if necessary. But never it should go below 45 degrees Celsius and above 65 degrees Celsius. Okay, lower the melting temperature, more will be the annealing, and therefore again non-specific annealing may take place. Now, how to calculate the TM value? Although we can experimentally determine the TM value of a primer, but the easier way to know the primer TM value is to calculate by predicting the temperature tolerance based on the composition of the primer sequence. As we know that between C and G, cytosine and guanine, there are 3 hydrogen bonds, and between A and T, there are 2 hydrogen bonds. While duplex is formed, then between C and G, 3 hydrogen bonds are formed, and between A and T, only 2 hydrogen bonds are formed. Therefore, to dissociate G from C, more temperature will be required than that of A and T, because number of hydrogen bonds are more. Therefore, the GC content, number of G's and C's in the primer sequence will definitely increase the melting temperature. And therefore, a very simple formula for calculating melting temperature is given by this equation. Tm is equal to 4 degrees Celsius into number of G's and C's in the primer plus 2 degrees Celsius into number of A's and T's in the primer. So this is a very simple equation. But nevertheless, this equation may not give you the optimal values of the melting temperature. There are some complex formula. They are also used in a number of online and offline tools. One such formula is this, which calculates not only the optimum TM value, but also it is calculated based on the concentration of different salts in the buffer, particularly sodium and potassium salt, because the PCR reaction is done in presence of a buffer. So the buffer contains sodium and potassium ions for balancing the electrolyte concentration. So in presence of salt, as you know, that the temperature tolerance of any compound gets increased. As we know that suppose we are trying to dissolve salt or sugar in water, once it gets saturation point of time in room temperature, if you raise the temperature, then you can add more salt. So temperature of the solvent will always determine how much amount of solid can be dissolved. So like that way, the temperature tolerance is increased in presence of salt in a solvent. So salt adjusted TM value of primer needs to be calculated when we want to calculate the optimum temperature or TM value of a primer design. So that can be calculated by a formula like this. Of course, in all the different software or tools, they do not use the same formula, but this is one which is more commonly being followed. Then primer annealing temperature. Now, if the TM value is very high, then necessarily our annealing temperature will also be higher. If TM value is more, then you have to adjust the annealing temperature accordingly. Normally, annealing temperature is calculated as 3 to 5 degrees Celsius below than that of the TM value. If the TM value of a primer is around say 58 degrees Celsius, then the annealing temperature for PCR should be around 55 degrees Celsius. If the TEM value is 58, the annealing temperature should be around 55 degrees Celsius. It should be 3 to 5 degrees Celsius below than that of TEM value. Now, it should not be too low or it should not be too high. So as I already said, if the TEM value is very less, annealing temperature will be very less. In that case, there will be tendency of non-specific priming. And if the TEM value is very high, and then there will be no tendency of annealing, and therefore hybridization or annealing will not take place, and there will be no duplex formation, and therefore product yield will be less, amplification will be less. Now, another important property of the primer is GC content. The number of G and C in the primer sequence. Ideally, the GC content of a primer should be between 40 to 60%. If there are 100, out of 100 nucleotides, 40 to 60 nucleotides should be G or C. That means if the length is around, say, 20, then 20 BP, then around 8 to 12 nucleotides should be represented by G or C. But of course, this is variable. In most of the online and offline tools for primer designing, you will find that this GC content by default has been adjusted to 20 to 80%. It may vary from 20 to 80%, but optimally, it should be between 40 to 60%. It is always better. You may ask me why this is important. Why GC content should be higher, little bit higher, means 40 to 60% at least. Because as I already said that between G and C, there are 3 hydrogen bond formation, and therefore it will ensure stability of the duplex. After the primer gets annealed to the target, the stability of the duplex will be ascertained by the GC content. The next property is GC clamp. GC clamp means the presence of G or C bases among the 5 nucleotides at the 3' end of the primer. I think you know that what is it mean. 3' end means end towards the right. 5' end is ends towards the left. So from the 3' end of the primer, the polymerase will start elongating the new strand of the nucleotide sequence. So at the 3' end, the DNA duplex between the template and the primer should be stable. Unless it is stable and proper annealing taking place at the 3' end of the primer with the template single-stranded molecule, the polymerase will not get activated and there will be no elongation. Amplification will not be there. So we should ensure stability of the binding between the annealing and the between the primer and the template by ensuring presence of at least 1 or 2 G or C out of the 5 nucleotides at the 3' end. So this is called GC clamp. But we should ensure that the number of G or C at the 3' end should not be higher than or more than 3 G or Cs. Up to 3 G or C can be allowed, not beyond that, within the last 5 bases in the 3' end. Next important characteristic of the primer is the secondary structure. We should avoid the primers having secondary structure. Means there should not be any tendency of the primer to have intermolecular and intramolecular interactions. Intermolecular means between 2 molecules. Intramolecular means within the molecule, within a single molecule. These interactions take place because of the complementarity between 2 parts of the same sequence or between two segments of two different sequences. So it can lead to poor or no yield of the product and can greatly reduce the availability of primers to the reaction. This is one kind of intermolecular interaction, or it is rather intramolecular interaction, that is called hairpin formation. That means if some part of the sequence of one single primer is complementary to some other part in the same sequence, the sequence may get folded because primers are single-stranded molecule. They can get folded like this, and they may have a tendency to get annealed to each other. One end of the primer may get annealed to another end of the primer like this. So if it happens, then it will form a structure similar to hairpin, and therefore it is called a hairpin interaction. So in that case, if the complementary sequences of the two segments contain 3 or more nucleotides and that contains G or C, then there will be a compact binding between the two segments within the primer. So the primer will get folded and the fold will become stable. Then the single-stranded primer will not be available for actual annealing to the template. So this kind of hairpin formation may be avoided. How can we avoid it? That means we should ensure that there is no complementary sequence between the two ends of the primer, particularly if it contains complementary sequences of 3 or more nucleotides in an array containing G or C, then it should be avoided. Similarly, intramolecular interactions can take place between two molecules of the same primer. That means one molecule of forward to another molecule of forward primer, or one molecule of reverse to another molecule of reverse. That is called self-dimer formation. Same is the case. That means there may be some complementary regions, and therefore the same primer, one molecule can combine with the other molecule before it binds to the template. So primers will get into duplex form before it binds to the template. There will be no primers available for binding, and therefore proper amplification will not take place. Similar is the case with cross dimer formation. That means forward primer binding with reverse primer. So some part of the sequence of the forward primer may be having complementary to another part of the sequence of the reverse primer, and therefore they may have a tendency to bind. And if this binding is usually involving Z or C, particularly if it is in more than 3 nucleotides in an array or contiguously, then we should avoid such kind of primers for use. Then another important property, repeat. Dinucleotide repeats means repetition of the same dinucleotide, like AT, GC. These kind of dinucleotide repeats should be avoided. What is the reason? Because these kind of dinucleotide repeats are necessarily found in genomic sequences of organisms, particularly in the non-coding regions very frequently. And depending upon these kind of dinucleotide repeats, based on the number of such repeats or the length of such repeats, we can also identify the sequence. So these kind of dinucleotide repeats are usually considered as genetic markers. So let's say microsatellite markers or mini satellite markers. So they usually contain this kind of dinucleotide repeats for variable number of times in a large genomic sequence, and one such repeat may contain variable number of dinucleotides. So depending upon the length of the dinucleotide repeat, or depending upon the number of times it is repeated in different parts of the sequence, the organisms can be typed. So this is called one kind of molecular typing of organisms by use of genetic marker. So these are normally found in the non-genetic segment of the sequence frequently. So if our primers have got this kind of dinucleotide sequence containing dinucleotide repeats of 4 or more, that may bind non-specifically to the genetic marker sequences of the genome sequence. They may not be specific to the target sequence, and therefore non-specific annealing will take place and non-specific product will be formed. So therefore, we should not allow the primers to contain 4 or more dinucleotide. Normally, it should be restricted to 3 if it is possible, but sometimes we may accept up to 4 maximum, not beyond 4. Similar is the case with single nucleotide repeat, which is normally referred to as run. C, 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 Z, 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 like that, A. This kind of single nucleotide repeats are also considered as genetic markers, and they should be avoided in the primer sequence. So like that of the dinucleotide repeats, single nucleotide repeats or runs should also be restricted to 4 maximum. Then another important property to look for while designing a primer is the uniqueness and conservedness of the primer sequence. So the primers should be highly conserved for a particular target sequence. That means the primers should be designed based on a conserved part of the sequence of the gene which we want to amplify. Say, for example, we are trying to design a primer sequence for a gene which is around 10,000 BP long. Oh, sorry, or maybe say 1,000 BP long. Sometimes it may be 10,000 also, no problem. Suppose 1,000 or 1,200 BP long. Now, suppose this should identify a particular organism, say E. coli. Now, this is one particular gene, suppose LT gene. Now, there are thousands of these different E. coli sequences which have been already sequenced, and the databases contain all the genome sequences of these thousands of different strains of E. coli. Now, we cannot expect that the sequence of all these thousands of genome sequences pertaining to this particular gene are exactly 100% alike. Here and there may be some mutations, although they basically represent the same organism and the same gene. But even then, within the species, there may be a lot of variations in terms of the sequence of nucleotides of that particular gene, because mutations are frequently occurring, and therefore some of the sequences might have been already mutated. Now, if you design the primer only considering the gene sequence of a particular gene, then the primers may represent a particular part of the sequence which frequently undergo mutation. And then this primer will not anneal to the mutated sequences of many different strains of organism. You will fail to get amplification. So, consensus sequence within the gene sequence, and then we should target designing the primer by taking the consensus part of the sequence as the template. That is one part. That means it should be able to amplify all the sequences of the gene in all the strains of the organism. It should be specific. At the same time, we should also avoid the cross homology. Means our primer should not anneal to any other gene of the same organism or same gene of other organisms. That means it should be unique also. Not only it should be universal, it should also be unique, so that there is no cross homology. So that is why after designing a primer pair, we go for sequence alignment using the online tool BLAST. So while the sequences are blasted, then we see to which sequence in the database our primer sequence are showing highest level of similarity. If it is showing similarity to a number of different organisms, not only restricted to the desired organism against which we are designing the primer, then we should avoid such kind of primers for use because they will not be having specificity. Specificity will be lost. So this has to be ascertained. So these are all different parameters or the ideal properties of a primer that have to be considered while designing primer. Now the online and offline tools take care of all these ideal properties, and taking into account the parameters best suited for an ideal primer, they will give us the primers as outcome of the primer designing process. Now, how will you calculate the amplicon length and the product length? So amplicon length is very easy because amplicon length means the product length. It is the segment of the target sequence that represents the sequence starting from the first nucleotide in the 5' end of the forward primer up to the last nucleotide, or rather first nucleotide of the reverse primer. So that means we have to see the position ahead at which the forward primer is annealing, the first position, and also we have to see what is the position of the primer from which the reverse primer is annealing in the other strand in the reverse direction. So if we know these two positions, suppose this is the template, here the forward primer is annealing and then the reverse primer is annealing on the other strand here. So point at which the forward primer is annealing to the point at which the reverse primer is annealing, this particular part is called the product length. That means the PCR will amplify this part. So that can be calculated by this formula: position of antisense primer. Antisense primer means the reverse primer minus position of the sense primer or the forward primer plus 1. You may ask me why this 1 has to be added. This has to be added because the product will also contain both the first and the last nucleotide. Say, for example, if I ask you how many digits are there from 3 to 6. If you count, it is 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 digits are there. If you simply subtract 3 from 6, 6 minus 3 is equal to 3. It will either exclude 3 or exclude 6. So to include both 3 and 6, we should add 1 after subtraction. Similar is the case here. So position of antisense primer, reverse primer minus position of the sense primer plus 1 will give you the product length. Now for diagnostic PCR, when we use it for diagnostic purpose, our purpose is not to amplify a large sequence categorically to include a desired part of the sequence or the whole gene. Normally for diagnostic PCR, we restrict the product length to around 500 to 600 BP. Because normally in conventional PCR, we use a DNA polymerase, which is derived from Thermus aquaticus, what we call as Taq polymerase. All polymerases have got a limitation in terms of one property, what is called 5' to 3' proofreading capacity or fidelity. Or it is also called 5' to 3' exonuclease activity. So this property, fidelity of Taq polymerase, is also restricted. In every 1000 nucleotide, the polymerase enzyme facilitates synthesizing. One nucleotide will be a faulty one, means it will get mutated. Suppose for 1000 BP length, a new nucleotide strand is being produced by polysaccharide, the Taq polymerase. Sorry, polymerase, not polysaccharide. So the Taq polymerase will make a mistake in one particular position. Out of 1000, one particular nucleotide will get changed. But by PCR reaction, we need exactly same copy of the nucleotide sequence. We want millions of copies of the same sequence. We do not get it, do not want it to be mutated. So to ensure that, if you are using conventional PCR employing Taq polymerase, we should restrict the product length to around 500 to 600 BP, so that every time it gets amplified, we do not get any mutated product. But if you want to amplify larger sequences, say sequences beyond 1200 BP or 2000 BP segment or more than that, then you cannot use the Taq polymerase enzyme. You have to change the enzyme. There are many enzymes which are available commercially, which are having higher fidelity. They do not make a mistake, even if they synthesize a very large segment of DNA beyond 2000 BP. Say, for example, some of such enzymes are PFU, KOD, etc. Or another is called VANT, V-E-N-T, VANT. So these are some high fidelity enzymes. So if you are going for a long PCR, means if you are targeting amplification of the very long sequence of DNA, in that case, you should not use the Taq polymerase enzyme, rather you should use the high fidelity enzymes like PFU, VANT, KOD, etc. Now, another question is product position. This is a common confusion. Say, for example, we have the length of a particular gene around 1200 BP. Now we want to amplify this gene for identification of a particular organism, or we want to identify that gene. Then it is not necessary that we have to amplify the entire length of the gene sequence. We may amplify any part of the gene sequence. Say, if we are going to use diagnostic PCR by using conventional method, we will target amplifying only around 500 BP of the 1200 BP segment. Now, while designing primers, therefore, you can restrict which part of the sequence will be amplified. Now, the question is whether our products should be representing the targets towards the 5' end or the 3' end, because the target is very large, say 1200 BP. Out of that, 500 BP segment can be amplified targeting any part of the sequence. Maybe it represents the 5' end, maybe it represents the 3' end, or maybe it represents any central part. Now, the question arises, which part we should target? Theoretically speaking, there is no any specificity for targeting a particular part of the sequence for amplification. That will depend upon the conserved nature of the sequence. As I said, that it should be universal in all the different strains of the same organism, so that it can target amplification in any strain. It may represent any part of the sequence, but statistically, it has been found that if we design the primers targeting amplification of the segment representing the one which is nearer to the 3' end, not to the 5' end, to the 3' end, those primers usually give better result in PCR. This is only a statement based on statistical evaluation. Conventionally, it is being followed by many workers, but there is no logic in support of this. So you may design primers targeting any part of the sequence. Now, TM of the product, sometimes the very high number of C or Z, GC content of the template, suppose is very high. You have chosen one part of the sequence, of the target sequence for amplification, which has got very high GC content. Then necessarily, higher GC content means it will need more temperature for denaturation. So during process of setting the temperature for denaturation in the PCR reaction, you have to take care in that case. In that case, it may require more temperature for denaturation or more time for denaturation than that of the usual values. That is why I told you that the initialization is usually done by exposing the reaction mixture first for one time to about 94 to 98 degrees Celsius and for a variable period of 1 to 9 minutes. So this variability in range is because of this complexity. More the complex is the length of the product as well as more content of GNC, more will be the temperature requirement for denaturation, and or more time period will be required for denaturation. So that has to be adjusted accordingly. Annealing temperature, as I already said, that normally it is calculated based on the TM value. If the TM value is known, then annealing temperature can be adjusted to 3 to 5 degrees Celsius lower than that of the TM value of the primer. But there are two primers in PCR, one reverse and one forward. Now the question will arise, TM of which primer we will consider for considering the annealing temperature, because there will be only one annealing temperature for the entire PCR reaction. We cannot have two annealing temperature for one pair of primer. So we should not go for taking an average. It's not mathematical calculation. Rather, we should take into account the lower TM value. Out of both the primers, which primer is having lower TM value, and the lower TM value should be considered for calculating the annealing temperature. So it should be around 3 to 5 degrees Celsius below than that of the melting temperature. But for better calculation, you can use this kind of formula also. Optimum TA means annealing temperature will be equal to 0.3 into TM of the primer plus 0.7 into TM of the product minus 25. 25 is a constant. Now here only one point is that you must have to have the TM of the product. But to know the TM of the, to have the ID sequence of the target. If the target sequence is not known, then you cannot go for this. If the target sequence is known, then you can calculate it out, and the optimal TM value, optimum annealing temperature can be calculated very easily. But of course, nowadays it's not a very big task, because you have got the special class of thermal cycler which can take care of it. So where you can set variable annealing temperature in different rows of the wells in a PCR plate. Okay. So these are called gradient thermal cyclers. So by using gradient thermal cyclers, you can use various annealing temperature in different rows of the plate, and therefore after one run you can determine which annealing temperature will be suitable. Suppose the lower melting temperature for the primer is around 55. You start from around, say, 50 degrees Celsius. In one row you fix 50, second row 51, third row 52, fourth row 54 or 53. Then you see the result, which temperature is giving better result. If the intense band, distinct bands are formed at some temperature, say 52 degrees Celsius, then you will choose that temperature as the proper annealing temperature. Now, because we can use only one annealing temperature for both the primers, so it should be suitable for annealing of both the primers. Therefore, there should not be a TM mismatch between the two primers. That means the difference in TM value between forward and reverse primer should not be very high. Suppose one primer is having TM value 60 degrees Celsius and the other is having 48 degrees Celsius or 50 degrees Celsius. They are not a good pair of primer because the mismatch will happen in calculating the annealing temperature. If we consider the lower temperature, if it is 48, then the annealing temperature will be counted from say around 45. But for the other primer, where the TM value is 60, the optimum annealing temperature should have been around 55 maximum. So it will be quite away from the annealing temperature. Therefore, there may not be any annealing for the other primer. So therefore, a mismatch of TM value between the two primers beyond 3 degrees Celsius is not usually allowed. But sometimes we can go up to 5 degree variation, not more than 5 degrees Celsius. So these are all attributes upon all these ideal properties. Many different online and offline primer designing softwares have been designed. They will take care of all these parameters and give us the sequence of the primer pairs suitable for amplification if we provide the template sequence. If we provide the template sequence, then it will provide us the primer pairs. So there are several options with us. Primer tree is one of the commonly used software. This is available for downloading free of cost, open access software. But normally nowadays we go for online designing by using of an online tool called Primer Blast. It is within the NCBI database. This particular software is available. This Primer Blast is actually providing a graphical interface for primer designing, wherein it uses Primer tree software. So Primer tree has been embedded in Primer Blast for primer designing. So when you use Primer Blast, you are actually using Primer tree software. There are many other softwares available, say Zine Runner, Fast PCR, Primer Select. Primer Select is one of the components of a commercial package called DNA Star, then Pearl Primer, etc. So nowadays, most of the workers depend on use of Primer Blast as a very robust and suitable online tool, free of cost available. We used to design primers by using Primer Blast very commonly. Then there is another class of PCR primer. They are called degenerate primers. What are they? Let me just simply explain. Suppose you know that the target sequence that you want to amplify has already been known to have some frequent mutations in certain segments of the target gene sequence. Now, if we do not include all the variable nucleotide options in the primer, if we have got a specific sequence of primer, that may not. So in that case, to retain the sensitivity and specificity of the primers, we may have to provide some degeneration in the primers. Means we may have to provide option for the nucleotide in a particular position. Suppose it may be either C or T, it may be either A or G, it may be either of the 4 nucleotides in a position. Such kind of necessity may be there depending upon the degeneration of the product. And therefore, we may have to design primers having this kind of flexibility or option. So this is represented by certain single alphabet symbols in the primers which you have to know. There are several variants of it. These are the 4 variants most commonly used. A Y in the primer sequence indicates that in this position, there can be either C or T. Okay. If we want to say that in this position, there is a flexibility, it can be either C or T, then we should put it as Y. Then we run this sequence for synthesis of primer to the synthetic company, which will synthesize the primers for us. They will understand that they will have to produce 2 types of sequences, some molecules containing C at this position and some other molecules containing T in this position. That means they will produce 50% molecules with C at this position and 50% molecule with T at this position. Similarly, if there is a variation between A and Z, it is represented by R. If there is any one type of nucleotide representing one particular position, then it can be represented by either I or N. N is used because it represents any nucleotide, N for nucleotide. I is representing inosine because inosine can non-specifically bind to any of the nucleotides, A, T, C, and G. And therefore, I stands for any nucleotide. There are several other options available. S, C, Z, T, I, these are already known to you. If it is to be representing A or Z, that means a purine, then it can be represented by R. A pyrimidine, C or T, can be represented by Y. Then amino group containing nucleotide A or C, amino nucleotide may be represented by M. Ketonucleotide may be represented by G or T. Similarly, there are many other options available. So then those primers will be called degenerate primers. Now come to in silico PCR. After designing a primer, we will first go for a blast, already I discussed, to know its specificity and sensitivity. And after that, we will test the primer for the properties by using certain primer property calculators that we will discuss during practicals. We shall have to calculate the properties of the primers, whether it contains the ideal properties or not, that can be calculated. And then thereafter, we normally nowadays go for further testing of the primers by a process called in silico PCR. That means, before taking the PCR primers to the lab for actual wet lab experiment, we again validate the primers by using them in a process using computational method which almost simulate PCR reaction. It is nothing but actually using the templates, probable templates representing the target sequence, and we see the primers whether they do have high level of similarity to the target sequence or not. That means we go for searching for alignment. So it is also similar to alignment search, but the in silico PCR platforms or the softwares have been created. There are more than one varieties available now. Out of them, this is more commonly used, which is called in silico PCR. It is available in this particular URL or website, insilico.ehu.es. This was developed by Dr. Joseba Bikandi and Dr. Rosario San Milan and their co-workers from Department of Immunology, Microbiology and Parasitology, Faculty of Pharmacy in the University of Basque Country. So, doing in silico PCR contains all the known genome sequences of different species of bacteria so far available in international databases. So they have embedded all the sequences, known sequences of genomes of all bacteria. So for testing the specificity of primer sequences against certain bacterial genes, this platform is very, very suitable because all the different sequences of genome sequences of bacteria are already embedded in the database. So you can go for is sensitivity and specificity testing of the design primer sequences by going into that. It will be more clear. It will be more clear to you when we will discuss it practically, when we will show you. Similarly, another platform is available which is called Virtual PCR or VPCR. It's almost similar to the earlier one, in silico PCR. This is developed by Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, University of California. It has given, of course, some additional parameters or output doing in silico. This is development. Many things are yet to be developed. Similarly, two more platforms are available, IPCR and PSC. We will not go into detail about all of them. We will restrict our discussion to use of in silico PCR in the practical class. So thank you very much. This is what I wanted to discuss for today. And next class will be a practical session in which I shall show you how to design a pair of primers against a target sequence.